all you probably really need to know is that John and I love talking about innovation. We've both been at General Mills for quite a while, and most of those years have been related to innovation roles. So that's probably all you need to know. John, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think a lot of people, the calling myself an agitator is kind of a goofy thing that I just did this last year as I moved into my role. My job, my actual title is Consumer Insights Manager, Project Leader for innovation, and actually International Innovation, Pipeline Development, Innovation, Technology, and Quality Division at General Mills Incorporated. And so I looked at all of that, and I just decided I needed to make a change a little bit. And so you can go on my LinkedIn profile. It says Agitator for Innovation and Change, because it's what I do, and it actually ends up setting an expectation for what I'm going to do when I partner with teams globally. So my job is essentially to go out and partner with our businesses all over the globe and help them to innovate better and innovate faster. So that, taking on that title has kind of been a little bit empowering, where people kind of respond to it in a pretty positive way.
Yep, and I lead a team of 10 people, and we do all the new product research for our U.S. retail division. So I'm U.S. domestic, John is international. I want to point something out on my title slide that's very important as we tell this story today, and it's the ING part of building. We are on a journey. I'll spare you the suspense. We don't have a slide at the end that says, we've achieved success. We've launched $100 million new products in the last couple of years. But I can tell you with certainty that I've been in new product development at General Mills for 16 years. I started when I was 12, I think, so 28, 29. No, I'm a little bit older than that. But I can say with certainty that the degree of cultural change that I've seen in the last 18 months to 2 years at General Mills has been more than I saw the first 14 years of my career. The first 14 years of my career, we basically thought about new product development the same. Now, there were some enablers in terms of technology and the way we could do research and connect with people. But the approach and thought process was pretty much the same. In the last 2 years, we've seen incredible change. So we're going to talk about that story. So a little bit of context to set up where we started from. And if I go back, 2-3 years ago, and it's even the case now, most new products fail. Okay, this is a stat you always see, 80 to 90% of new products fail. It doesn't matter the industry. It always still sort of astounds me that it's still the case. And General Mills is no different. In fact, when we look at the success rate in the categories that we compete in, for the most part, we were lagging our competition. We are also launching a ton of SKUs that were not sustainable in the marketplace. Can't remember if this is the 64th or 65th flavor of Hamburger Helper. It is whole grain, though. I always love that part. I've worked on stuff like this, so I'm making fun of myself. But we were launching 200 plus SKUs a year, very long tail if you looked at the volume. Most of it did not sustain. We paid a ton of money in slotting fees just to get on the shelf with no real return. And doesn't this look like the spirit of innovation alive and well right here? This is where it all happens. I know a lot of you work in a big company. If you're like General Mills, and I'm guessing a lot of you are, we love to have meetings. We love to talk to ourselves. We love to make ourselves seem smart, right? But as we all know, not a lot gets accomplished when you're sitting in your conference rooms talking to each other. Meanwhile, this chart on the left has gotten a lot of play in our company the last 5 years, I would say. We're basically getting our ass kicked by small guys. And I think you could probably put any industry up here, not just food. Think about beer and the craft beer industry. Think about hoteling and what's happening with Airbnb. Soda, I've been reading about craft soda, up and coming. Think about the taxi industry being disrupted by Uber. Think about any industry really, and it's someone comes out of the blue and surprises you, and it's no different for us. Chobani, $0 to $2 billion in 3 years, I think. It's crazy. A nobody in the yogurt category, now a big player. Kind Bar, huge company that sort of surprised General Mills. We have a big bars business. So not a good situation. We dominated in the 70s. We're losing in the 2000s. So why is this? Why was it? Was it because these entrepreneurs and smaller companies had more money? No, absolutely not. We have a lot of money at our disposal to use for R&D, consumer insights, and marketing. They have better people? Maybe, but probably not. We have a lot of smart people that work at General Mills. I've been really surprised how well General Mills hires people. We have very smart people. So I don't think it's that. It's probably because of the mindset and the approach. A lot of entrepreneurs start by innovating for themselves because they have a problem. They have an opportunity that they see. They're making trade-offs that they don't want to make. They have empathy because they are innovating for themselves. They're not afraid to fail. They're passionate. They're out selling small early. They're not writing surveys usually. They're not doing focus groups usually. I'm making some generalizations here to make a point, not that that's always the case. So we needed to change. Luckily, we had 2 senior leaders. One, our head of innovation, Peter Erickson, a couple years ago declared that we want to be the best big small food company in America. And a lot of this was inspired by the chart that I showed and the situation that we were in. And what does he mean by that? We talk about the spirit of the small and the scale of the big. General Mills and a lot of big companies are very good at scaling. We have incredible efficiency in our plants and manufacturing, cost cutting, Six Sigma, all of that, but we needed the spirit of the small. That's what we were really missing. At the same time, the company declared that we were going to have a consumer-first strategy, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I love this quote by the head of US retail: "People don't exist on PowerPoint slides. You've got to go out and meet them." It's also the way we talked about making decisions. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We talk about making consumer-first decisions. Kind of the cool thing that happened, so we developed an approach to innovation called consumer-first design. I think some people in this video might refer to it as agile, which was an early phrase that we used. And consumer-first design and our approach to innovation is really fueling this cultural shift within General Mills. And when we talk about this consumer-first strategy within the company, innovation is leading out in terms of how we want to act. And the cool thing is that it's really energized our employees. So we're going to kind of lead with hearing from some of our employees.
The reason now is the right time to implement agile process and consumer-first design is because the only way we or anyone else will win is by being better and faster to meet consumer needs.
If I narrate the future and think about General Mills, again, this whole idea around how do we all operate in a more agile way. We've gone pretty head forward on this whole idea around consumer first, of which agile is a way to deliver upon consumer first. We'll continue to get behind that.
I've loved all the products that I've developed, but this one, I feel more invested.
I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot more fun than waiting for a PowerPoint deck in 6 weeks' time.
I joined General Mills because of how passionate I am and how passionate this company is about its consumers.
We love developing products for consumers and getting to that level of depth of consumer insight and empathy building.
The stories that you hear from consumers, right? That's where the power comes in.
I've been in the company for about 7 years, and in the first handful of years, I maybe only had 4 or 5 interactions with actual consumers. I had 4 or 5 last week. So when you think about if Agile's fully adopted, what does that look like? That looks like a lot of people not here, not at this office, out and about engaging with consumers to build their own intuition and empathy.
This process has actually given me the best and deepest understanding of what it truly means to be in touch with your consumer.
Through the Agile process, I've talked to more consumers in the last year and a half than I've talked to in the last 10 years.
Agile in many ways makes us listen to the consumers and truly incorporate their changes.
It's very different than sitting in front of a computer and seeing things from a survey or hearing things secondhand. Getting a chance to spend so much time with consumers and doing it in an iterative way allows that intuition to develop both quickly and then really deeply.
The willingness to give it a try, the willingness to lean in the risk, whether you're a scientist, a director, a vice president, an executive vice president. Find more time to calendar and get in front of consumers, because that really is the thing that points you to the future.
So that was a little bit of the cart before the horse. Now John and I are going to talk a little bit about the principles, some of the core principles of consumer first design. Went back to the beginning. So going back to the start, a little bit about inspiration for the key elements that make up consumer first design, both external and internal. External was inspired a lot by Lean Startup and Eric Ries. Steve Blank, who, if you were here last year, spoke of one of the keynotes. That's actually me. Went to one of his courses at Berkeley. Great guy. Clayton Christensen, we'll talk about jobs to be done. D School. We have an internal guy. His name is Kevin Ryan. He's a food anthropologist. He interviewed about 100 entrepreneurs, learned what made them tick. And then we've acquired Larabar, so we've talked to Lara. This is John Forker. We acquired Annie's. So he built that company up from something small to be really big. So we talked to him. And then we just acquired Epic Meat Bars. Really cool couple people that were founders of that we've learned a lot from. So the first principle that we talk about is putting the consumer first in the way that we make decisions. And it sounds like such a generalization. It's like, God, why would you even have to say that, right? I mean, everyone says they're customer first or consumer first. This whole track is that name. But for those of you that are in big companies, you can probably relate that the way we make decisions is not always consumer first. A lot of times it's margin first, okay? We used to have a kind of a standing rule in innovation at General Mills that if you were going to introduce a new product, it had to be margin parity to the rest of your line. It's hard. It's hard to do that in a lot of cases. It has to be, a lot of times, technically feasible. No, we can't do that because we can't make that in our plants. Or a customer demands something. I won't mention names, but we want you to develop this. Go develop that. That's not necessarily consumer first. That's more retailer first. So what we're starting to hear leadership say is we are making decisions that are consumer first. And they're based on jobs to be done. So you've all probably heard about jobs to be done theory. Again, this is not something new that we're inventing. We're taking from some of the best. But thinking of our products as services, and what job are people hiring our solutions for, both functionally, emotionally, and socially. And we've got a lot of tools and techniques that we use to really bring this to life. And the cool thing is that our leadership is now speaking this language. What is the consumer hiring this solution to do? What design aspects must be present to do the job? Are we doing the job better than the current competitive set, which isn't always our category? So jobs to be done and making consumer first decisions has been a big advantage or a big change for us. The second, I think this is probably the biggest shift we've had, is instead of hiring out our empathy, so my apologies to qualitative moderators, almost all the qualitative research we do now is our employees talking to people directly. Okay, we're not sitting in back rooms eating M&Ms and checking our email and pretending to listen, which we've all done. I've done it. We are out in stores, we're out in people's homes. We've designed we've enabled a whole bunch of opportunities for people to directly interact with people, and John's going to talk more about that. But we got finance people talking to consumers. We have R&D people, like in the video, Lisa said she never talked to anyone. Now she's talking to people almost every day. Is Martine in here? Martine, one of my team members, is here. I sit in the office, and I have a team of 10, and I feel like I'm sitting by myself all the time because they're always out talking to people, so it's a good thing. We'll talk more about that. An example, how are we doing on time, John? Doing all right?
Fine.
All right.
Yeah.
An example from my career. We all love to talk about failures now. It's kind of the end thing, right? If you went to the keynotes this morning, he soon talked about one of his failures. About 10 years ago, I was a part of this new product launch. Does anyone remember this? Nature Valley cereal? I'd be surprised if anyone raised their hand because it was only in market for about 6 months. It was going to be the next big thing. Nature Valley used to exist in cereal back in the 70s, kind of drifted away. We're going to reintroduce it. And we made a lot of decisions that were not consumer first. It had to be in a box because our manufacturing plant puts stuff in boxes. It had to have, I won't say the number margin, but it was a very high margin because our cereal operating unit has one of the highest margins in General Mills. It basically was 2 flakes in a cluster. It was not what people expected from Nature Valley, which was granola. We were talking to ourselves. It was in a very small box at a very high price, so it wasn't a good value equation. And it wasn't differentiated. It wasn't doing a job for anyone. I learned a lot from that big failure. We lost millions of dollars on that launch 10 years ago. I've learned a little bit since then. Contrast that with Nature Valley protein granola, which launched about 2 years ago. Focused on the job of keep me full longer. So I want to eat something in the morning that keeps me full till lunch. Fit with the brand, what people expected, granola in a bag, okay? People want portability. They want to be able to take it with them, take it to work, pour it in their yogurt. Protein, one of the first granolas with protein, which also satisfied that job to be done of keep me full longer. I can tell you that this product was not margin parity to the cereal line, and that was okay. And in year 1, it did $50 million in sales, which is pretty good for food, and has helped establish Nature Valley as a leader in the granola segment of cereal, which is one of the few growing subsegments in the category. So for me, just a stark example of consumer first, a lot of other things first. So with that, I'll hand it over to John.
All right. So the second principle we want to talk about, and this is kind of the, as we've talked about principles, jobs to be done being first, and being consumer first, and really approaching consumers being the second. The third thing is bringing the product forward. And so, the quote I'll give you is really simple, and that is that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures. It is significant, the difference it makes to put something in somebody's hand. And so for us, for me in the past, I can't tell you how many concept tests I ran. And I can't tell you how tough it is if you've put yourself in a consumer's shoes to try and interpret what somebody really means by a concept. It just doesn't work. And so we are moving the product forward as much as we can within our innovation process. And we want to get that first moment with a product way in the front. Design our questions around that. And so, as we've done that, though, I would say that there are some really big challenges. And for us, one of the things we could never do is we can never tap into our product development resources, our people that make stuff, until we had a proven concept. We can never tap into those resources. Hey, I want someone to make some stuff on the bench. Can we just do that? Have you passed through gate 1 yet? No. Okay then, go figure it out. And so that was issue number 1 and a big challenge. And we've had a big cultural change in order to get over that. And so that is not a problem for us anymore. The second issue, though, is as a product developer, we have a great group of R&D folks and people that make stuff and create stuff. And they, really felt like the product itself was a reflection on them. And so if I can't put something great out there, then I've got a real problem. And so we had to be quite honest, get over it. And that, I would say, for me globally, that's one of my biggest challenges is helping people to get over it. That's why I sit in our R&D group as opposed to our consumer insights group, because that's my role, is to push and to encourage people to to have this minimum viable product approach and to move the product up front, because the learning is going to be so much better. So that's kind of that's the backdrop. So moving the product up and the experience up as much as we can, so very important. And so we've pushed that even further by developing rapid prototyping. Rapid prototyping is essentially we do prototyping in roughly a day with a team. We'll bring a team in. We say, what are you trying to learn? You've got some ideas. What are the key ideas that you have, and what do you want to learn on those ideas? We have them prioritize questions. They come up with, essentially, prioritize 1 or 2 or 3 questions. We then send them out in order to make a prototype, not to sell it per se, but to start a discussion, because the consumer is so much more primed to be able to answer something if you put something in their hands. So an example, I was working in our convenience store business, and we were working on hot food. And so one of the great ideas we had for breakfast was consumers love things that they can eat with their hands, but man, they love a dip. So if they're eating some sort of a roll, or let's say a hot dog wrapped up in a pancake, man, they got to dip it in syrup, right? And so in order to do that, essentially, we had a whole pile of products sitting on the table. I found a corn dog, I found a cup. I put the corn dog in the cup. Done. There's my prototype. And so the consumer came in. I said, hey, and we rotate them around. And so I presented this to a number of consumers. I said, hey, this is what I've got. This is a sausage with a pancake around it, and it comes with this extra package so it holds your dip. You dip it in there. What do you think? And we had amazing conversations as a result. We found out first that was a terrible idea. But what was terrible about it was that, what were consumers concerned about? I thought they'd be a little concerned about how much of a mess it would make in their car. They didn't care about how much of a mess it would make in their car by and large. What they cared about was how much of a mess it would make on them on their way to work, right? And so what we were able to develop through that questioning and through that work was a core design principle that you can get a little mess on your fingers, but if you mess up the dress, it's over. And that is, a key design principle for anything that we develop in the morning. And so that's the idea. And so that's a design principle that applies not only to the, dip it in a pancake or dip the pancake in the syrup idea, but just about any idea we create for consumption in a car. And so that's the idea behind rapid prototyping and making adjustments as we go. So the last thing that I'll say on here is, it really is about embracing the pivot as well. And so it's knowing that the first idea, I can't tell you how many ideations that I've gone to, and man, there's one, at the end of the day, there's always an idea that I absolutely love. Here's what always happens, is that, and this happens with all my teams, so my marketing people, they have an idea that they love. The R&D people, same thing, right? None of the ideas are perfect. They all have to move. And so thinking of your ideas as a start is much more important than thinking of them as an end. And all the best ideas are going to move. And it's all about getting started on that overall learning process so that you can develop into great products. All right. The second thing that I want to talk about is agile. And this is all about trying to get at your projects in a much, much faster way. In the past, most of the ways that we did everything, was that everything had its time and place. So you started with deciding where you're going to play. Then you do an ideation. Then you do a concept test, just a screener, of course. Then you do a volumetric. You do a bunch of qualitative in the middle, some focus groups. Then you do a volumetric test, right? Concept volumetric test. Then you open the door to full development. You get R&D involved. You do about 5 CLTs. Then at some point, you get all done with that. Someone loves the product. Great. Now you do the packaging test. How we're going to package it. Then after that, you do the communication test, right? Then you do the bases too. You do the big kahuna at the end. And everything kind of has that same general pattern, and it takes 3 or 4 years. I've had projects that have taken longer than that. And so what we want to move to, the way that we're thinking about our products and projects, is thinking about holistic learning, where you're learning about everything all at once, and where you do it in an iterative process. One of the things we're trying to ask our teams is, what can you get done? What's your most important question? So start there. By starting on the key questions, you can get a whole lot more projects worked on. Sometimes the question is, how the heck are we going to make that? I don't want to do any research on something if it's how in the world am I going to get that technology to make it? I need to have R&D go do some work to figure out how we can make it, and I'm going to go work on other stuff. And so you can handle a much bigger portfolio if you're focused on key questions. Then how do I answer that question in 3 weeks? Working on a 3-week cycle generally gets you the ability to be able to answer those questions, move on to the next question, and move a lot faster. So this is an example from our Middle East market. And so in the Middle East, we wanted to get into sweet snacking. We have a really big baking mixes business. And so we did some work, 4 different iterations. This is a little bit longer than I was talking about. Each of these was about 2 months. But essentially, we started by doing an innovation expo, found a sweet snack and a chassis that worked in order to step in and be Betty Crocker. We did a consumer interaction. It moved a little bit. We did another one. It moved further. We put it into test because it was a completely new space for us and we didn't understand the category dynamics. So we needed to get in store. So we did this in a number of stores in Dubai. And then we were able to launch it a year later. So a total of net, about a year and 3 month cycle versus a typical three-year cycle. But it's all about focusing on that key question and then moving forward. Dedicated focus teams is kind of the next thing that we found to be particularly helpful. So as I work internationally, what I typically will do is I focus my time in a blitz week. And so we will do consumer immersion, we'll interact with consumers, we'll do ideation, we'll do strategy work, and then we will focus hard on what the next steps are going to be before I leave. That last piece is so critically important because so often, when we're doing work, it's great to have a good strategy session, but at the end of that strategy session, you leave and all of a sudden we don't know what to do. And so we spend a ton of time looking at what are your key questions and then building on top of those key questions, what are the next actions that you're going to take? And so put our focus there. And so that idea of a blitz week has been super powerful for us.
Yeah, and one of the pushbacks that we hear about consumer first design and being entrepreneurial is people will say, well, entrepreneurs only focus on one idea and they have one business. I have 6 projects or 8 projects that I'm trying to juggle all at once. So what we've been doing is we've been taking that idea of a blitz week and co-locating a team, 6 to 8 people, in a space that we've rented for anywhere from 30 days to 90 days, where they are focused on innovating in one space. And we've seen, we just started doing it a few months ago, and the early results have been extremely positive. There's this learning momentum. Teams are interacting with consumers 2 to 3 times a week. They're prototyping. They're having consumers actually come to the space, provide feedback. They're going in store every week, putting mock-ups on the shelf. It's very immersive. It's very different. It's very focused, and we're seeing really good early results from that.
Yeah, it's great, and it's following that 3-week cycle, agile cycle that we talked about. It's what is the key question? Let's go figure it out. Now let's come back, and so that mentality really helps a lot. All right, so real world learning is the last principle that I want to share, and this has been particularly important for us. It really is the essence of this. We call it a lemonade stand, and it is getting to where your foothold consumer is and asking for the sale. It's taking a product that's good enough. So I talked about using prototypes. It's got to be safe. We're not going to get anybody sick, but we want to get a conversation started. And so that's what we're trying to do with real world learning. And it's actually, we want to get to a point where we're asking the consumer, not only what do you think, but will you buy it? We're selling it for $1.99 today. Will you buy it? The other thing, the thing that goes with this is that our team does this. And so getting the team out there in that sales environment is the greatest empathy builder you're ever going to have. So some kind of key principles about it. I mentioned sell to learn. This is all about, actually asking for the sale. We go out into the wild. So this is not a pre-recruited thing that we do in a hotel or a conference room. We want to go into a location where we can find our foothold consumer and put up a little pop-up stand, offer a sample, and then ask people to buy. That is the essence of it. And you get a good sense, once you ask a person to buy, you get a good sense of whether they're in or not. And then you can continue your learning journey. The challenge is always, how do we embrace perfection? Again, now we're selling something. So this isn't just a rapid prototype that I whipped up in 15 minutes. This is something that we're gonna sell. And I will say, it better taste a little bit better than or better taste decent, to be honest. But what's good enough? And so that is a challenge that we have, and we work really hard in order to, with our R&D teams, in order to do this. And we've, as Corey mentioned, we've come a long way in 2 years. Huge behavior change happening on the R&D side of our business. And then it's really early in the new product development process. So this is a pre-gate 1 activity. This is not a vitality test. This is a learning test to understand how you might have to pivot. What's cool, and there's some things that I think are magical about it. I'll go back to, these aren't pre-recruited consumers. These are consumers in the real world. And so it's, from their perspective, it's not quite as much as research. It's experience. By asking them to actually spend their own money, we get better insights. And then from our team standpoint, it's getting out of the office and getting involved and engaging with the consumers. We'll have a marketing person or a CI person, or I've even had a division president standing, with the apron on and giving out samples and saying, hey, would you like to try this yogurt beverage? Would you like to try this protein drink? Whatever it happens to be. And them engaging one-to-one with the consumer. This idea of being face-to-face with a consumer, from my standpoint, I've been in consumer insights for 22 years as a career. I am so thankful that the glass is down. There is no glass between me and the consumer anymore, and my teams, and my marketing people. I don't have to spend 50% of my time in the back room trying to get them to pay attention, behave, and not make fun of people on the other side. And it's, you can't, if you're looking somebody eye to eye, you can't do that. And it drives empathy so that people see a hamburger helper consumer not as somebody where it's like, I'm glad I'm not them, but instead as somebody that has a real need that the product takes care of. So really significant, this idea of getting out of the building and getting our business teams face to face, eye to eye with their consumers. So just like I said, it's not this. Here we are. We're right out front. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we've been doing lemonade stands for about 4 years, I want to say. We're
Yep.
probably doing one a week domestically, and we're doing lemonade stands in 8 or 9 countries outside of the U.S. as well.
Yep.
This being one of them, right? You want to do any
Yeah, this
setup?
one, I'll do a quick intro. So this is a product that we were experimenting with in France and the UK, and it's actually on the shelf now. It is an Indian food, it was a world food spice mix.
I'm right here, part of the marketing team to launch Parampara in France. Today is very, very important. We are testing a new way to study how French consumer can react.
Our team that's participating, they're all very excited about this. I have to say this is a whole new approach for us. So for me, it's the very first experience I have of a lemonade stand.
Our work is to develop a product in the lab. So when you develop the product, you taste it and then you give it to your colleagues to taste. But it's not easy to have the consumer's reaction, so that's what happens today.
It's the first moment of truth between the brand and the consumers. It's important to understand from the consumers the main benefits, what we have to improve in the brand and in the kits.
It's not often that you have the opportunity to actually have your prospect consumers try the product before you've actually finalized it and have them involved in the process of finalizing, optimizing, and co-creating along with you what it is that they want to buy afterwards. So it's just a unique experience.
There's a value in, as a marketer, actually hearing from consumers exactly what they think in a real life environment.
I really like the flavour. It didn't have the chemical flavour that you kind of get in some pre-packet sauces and pastes.
I think we probably add a little bit of milk to it or a bit of sour cream to get a little less spicy.
It's quite nice. Yeah. It's better than the
If something draws me in and it's tasty, I'll get involved.
People have responded really positively. We've had a lot of purchases. I think it's going really well.
It's that proximity with the consumer and the ability to talk to them, to involve them, to hear from them firsthand, and instead of guessing what they might want, that on its own is very, very inspiring.
There's nothing like standing and actually talking to other human beings.
And I would like to be involved in many more because it's just a unique experience.
We could, repeat this again. It's been fun and I think we're going to get a lot of value out of it.
This is very experimental and I'm very proud to take part of this project.
So one of the things just to point out, did you notice the signage? I mean, it was just printed, right? That wasn't pretty. I would say that the packaging here was ridiculously overdeveloped. So, now this was Europe, Australia, we're working on that MVP journey. I would do black and whites, and so I think that's important. And then, the other thing, that is important and can be valuable in these is, especially on a food product like this where they have to make it and the preparation is a key element, sending the product home with who you think is the foothold target. So people that really are passionate about this thing, send it home. See how it works for them. They can get back to us with feedback, really using more traditional research is built on the back end of this. So really powerful to get in front of people.
And those insights that we get, so we get the first moment of truth insights, and to have marketers up there pitching an idea, you learn pretty dang quick, like what messages am I saying that resonates with people, and what messages am I trying to use that don't resonate? And for a marketer who's later sitting in a meeting with their division president, that means a ton. I was out there selling. I can tell you with conviction that this is what people resonate with. It's not from quantitative numbers from a survey listing different benefit communication. The other thing is, by sending the product home, we do follow up qualitatively, like John said, and we probably learned just as much, if not more, on what are we delivering on the job to be done. So are people using it in the circumstance that we thought we would use it? And is it better than the other options that they have? So it's a really rich piece of learning. The last thing I would say about lemonade stands is, like John said, we kind of track time to first dollar. So can you prototype within a day, and can you be in a saleable environment in less than 90 days? Is kind of a challenge that we talk about, which is really puts pressure on our systems. The last slide we have is one of the key enablers that we have for doing all of this is we have what we call internal Sherpa teams. So these are central teams that are not located in an operating unit. John is sort of one of these for international. They facilitate the process so the teams can focus on learning. So we have a team that helps with where to play strategy. We have a team that helps with jobs. We have a team that helps with prototyping. And we have a team that helps with things like lemonade stands. So these are teams of, call it 4 to 8 people that basically work, basically service people on the businesses to do all of this, which is, to be honest, it's really the secret sauce. If we were to hire all of this out, it would be too expensive. But given that we have people internal that are facilitating this, it's really the secret sauce of a lot of this.
Yep, absolutely.